Jake, you were very quiet in the night. After I gave you a little blessing to go to sleep, you in your little cage, and I was there in the bed, leaving the door open in case you were a bit alone. Yes, and you know, Jake, this morning something very nice happened. There were 7 of us there at Holy Mass at 7 o'clock, and you know that because of the overflow, somebody who was actually a local farmer and knew a lot about animals was puzzled because he could hear something. Do you know what he could hear? I think you do because you were making the noise. You were responding to the chant. You don't often make a noise, but you were using your little voice to chirp away as we were chanting away. So you knew what was going on, and you were a part of the song of creation. And you know that on a Sunday we sing that. Yes, all the creatures of the Lord are invited to bless the Lord. And you know that what you do unconsciously, man does consciously. And we represent you at the altar singing the song of creation. Now, little man, do you know that St. Benedict, whom you helped, remember? You helped St. Benedict? Well, he taught the importance of not putting anything before the work of God. You know what that is, little one? Well, the work of God, the Opus Dei, is the worship that happens on behalf precisely of all mankind and all creation, because the monk is called to do on earth what the angels do in heaven. And you know, little man, that the great restorer of the Benedictine life in France, Dom Prosper Guéranger, along with his successor Dom Paul de Latte, taught that that was the supreme work of the monk on earth. It was also taught by our own blessed Columba Marmion in the work that's still given to novices to read, the Trilogy, which is basically the fruit of his lectures. And he had the same spirituality. The monk is called to praise, and so are you. So now, as you're getting stronger, you're finding your voice again, and you're starting to chirp the praises of your Creator. Now, little man, do you know that after ordination I was back in Rome studying a great author, Adam Scott, and he had a similar teaching, and he became eventually a Carthusian. But when I was doing the studies back after ordination in Rome, do you know what was happening, little man? My prior was sending me messages. He was asking me already to do the bits that he couldn't do. Do you know what that meant, little man? Well, it meant going backwards now and again to France. To do what? It was to give to others what had been received. Do you know, that's the spirituality actually of St. Thomas Aquinas. Contemplari et contemplata ani istredere. To contemplate and to give unto others the things contemplated. And so, under obedience, I went to Fongombo and to the victims of the Sacred Heart, and eventually to one of the daughters of Fongombo, Goson, and so on, to preach and to give what they call the spiritual exercises. It means 8 days of lectures, 3 lectures a day. Now, what does that mean, little man? Well, it became very clear that the power of the word was something else, and that in a community which is devoted to prayer, every word sinks in. They're thirsting and they're hungering, and they listen attentively, and they even record it. And you know what happened one time, little man? It was when preaching in one of their daughter houses, Goson, the abbot came to me one morning and said something puzzling had happened. Do you know, little man, that when one starts to talk about old Nick in a certain way, he doesn't like it, and he starts to do things. You know what he'd done? There were 2 tape recorders recording the lectures, and when it came to one particular lecture, even though they were turning normally, both of them wouldn't record a thing. and both tapes were completely empty. So the abbot came and he wanted a special blessing over the tape recorders, but we realized what was going on. It was also happening in our own monastic church at St. Antimo. If you taught about St. Benedict, or rather about the enemy of St. Benedict, was a nuisance to him, as you know, in public, the things wouldn't work. Suddenly there would be an electric fault and no one could hear a thing through the microphone. But we knew what was going on and we weren't too worried. Now, little man, when I was giving these retreats, it occurred to me that it was a bit like this. When one is giving a retreat, it is a bit like being off the planet looking on. One is standing outside time looking in, putting brakes on the movement of time and adjusting it so as to live well what remains. And it was rather similar to what Dante Alighieri did when he wrote the Divine Comedy. It was all about the beyond. There were visits to heaven, to purgatory, and to hell. And he would happily put people whom he didn't like too much in hell, didn't he? But he had a guide. You know the guide? It was Beatrix. And she would guide him into the various compartments. Yes. And what did he see when he got to the door of hell? In Italian, it was the inscription over it, "Abandon hope, all ye that enter here." One student put that over her room in the university. Now, little man, I'll read to you if you want, if you're listening, what I wrote after giving all these retreats. I sat down and I thought to myself, that is an interesting vocation, to guide people into the beyond and back, so that they get their act together before going into the beyond, which is what we must do also at this time of year, isn't it, little man? This will be time ahead. This will be life. The rhythm of the moments as they go, with some thus set apart. A little strife, and we shall be no more, nor shall one know the path that once was trod. For nevermore shall footsteps come this way, and pain that came shall come no more, where pains were known before. For onward shall this orb turn on the same. Yet I am well, good master, in this task of calling from the shores of evermore, to linger by old rayons, and to bask a lengthy while mid waves of distant yore, is to be but a mystagogue, to be a little Beatrice on eternity. Yesterday, Jake, Mary Davis was here, and we talked about eternity. We even fixed it, warning anyone who was listening that it had to be taken seriously. Once there, it can't be fixed anymore. So we have a little dot that we call time to fix what will never stop on the other side. And so the monk is living in the true optic, doing already what his soul is made for in heaven. Do you know, little man, that the seraphim, the burning ones, seraph in Greek, or rather in Hebrew, is to burn, they do nothing but praise. They sing gratuitously to the thrice holy. And Don Guéranger, and Don Talat, and Don Columbier and Marmier all understood perfectly what it was all about. The praise of glory. And I was moved at Fontainebleau to see that there was a bit of heaven here on earth. And God was pleased. Do you know how we know that? It's because they kept growing and growing and growing. And they kept on founding and founding and founding. Even in the States. All because God was given his due. Fontainebleau, the abbot was asked by my prior to make sure that my liturgical formation was finished there with regard to the old rite. It was a place where time was no more, but only glory. Oh, beauty, ever old and ever new, and standing yet upon the world that turns too quickly as it goes. This mystic view of glory and of majesty that burns 'neath cherub wing, where seraph all of fire mid long trisagion veils ardent gaze, and stands where man walks on, and higher lifts o'er the world a chalice all ablaze. O mystery, where history is all attentive to a word not even heard. In uttering thus a syllable so small, I know that much in stillness such has stirred. I know, my God, that man has left behind much beauty that no dawn again shall find.